you've worked in TV for how long?
I started directing 20 years ago, and I've produced
And this is your first film,
That's
feature
correct.
film. What attracted you to this project, and was it something you were looking to do for a while?
Yeah, I had been reading feature scripts for probably 4 or 5 years prior to reading this script. And I was really fortunate. I was working on these amazing television shows. I was one of the executive producers of Weeds and the United States of Terra and thank you very much, Big C, and all these shows. I spent 7 years at Showtime. And amazing writers. And every script I read, feature script that I read, never quite met the level of writing that those shows did. And I just wanted to wait. And when I read this script first time through, I knew that this was the movie for me. So.
Is this something you sought out? Was it brought to you? How did you get a hold of this project?
It was sent to me by my agent and manager, and who are the ones that normally generate the material for me. And they said one of the producers lives in New York. He's flying back tomorrow. They want you to read it tonight, and if you're interested, meet them for breakfast near the airport. And I, like I said, I love the script and ended up meeting with them, and we hit it off and started talking about a cast, etc. at that point. And you know, it was months later before we kind of got the financing together and were able to go to Julianne, who was my first choice from the very beginning.
Now, Julianne Moore, amazing. In this project. Was it easy to get her into the film? Did you have to coax her to do it? How did that process work?
The process, you know, the great thing about Julianne is she's such a risk taker, and she does 5 movies a year, and she'll do 4 independents, and then she'll do a big studio movie. And I had never seen her do a comedy like this. You know, she was in The Big Lebowski and Crazy Stupid Love, but never one where she was really the lead and in every scene. I hadn't seen this kind of part from her, so I was hoping and praying that she would want to do it. And same thing, we sent the script to her agent manager. I think they kind of read everything that comes in first, and they loved it. And she's very quick to make a decision, and it was not long after that she said yes.
I know you guys have questions. I have one more, and then we'll open it up to the floor. I noticed at the beginning of the film, her dates, the men she was dating.
Yes.
You had John Hodgman, you had Jim Brewer.
Yeah.
These cameos, how did these cameos come about?
Great. I mean, we shot this movie in New York, even though it takes place in Kingston, Pennsylvania. We shot it in Westchester County. And one of the great things about shooting in New York is access to amazing actors that you don't always see all the time in movies that take place in LA. And I saw very distinct voices in each of those characters, and I wanted actors that not only could perform the parts, but also improvise. And most of what's actually in the movie was not scripted. It's the only area of the movie that wasn't scripted. There was some dialogue that we did, and it was funny, but I just said to them, just keep going. I mean, all the Hodgman stuff just grew in, and I don't like ice. I mean, that was all him. And I wanted big comedy very early in the movie to kind of hook in the audience and tell them what the movie was going to be. And Jim Brewer's crazy funny, and Renee Everett-Chambois, who plays the middle dates, all that was made up. Clap your hands and all.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Now, I know you guys have questions as well. If you got a question, just go ahead and raise your hand. We'll start right up front.
Hi, I'm Kay, the Palm Springs movie gal. And I know you did some partnerships with the Tribeca Film Festival.
Yes.
And that the film premiered there, is that correct?
Yes.
And they also had a partnership with some on-demand features so other people could, besides those going to the festival, could actually see the films. Can you tell me how that happened and how you felt about the films going on demand at that point?
Real quick, can everybody hear the question okay, or do you want to repeat it? No? The question, in a nutshell, was to put the film on demand, to be able to view it at home on demand.
Yeah, the movie was released in theaters on May 17th. It was available in what they call Ultra Video on Demand starting mid-April, right before the Tribeca Film Festival, where we made our world premiere. And as I kind of mentioned before the movie started, independent filmmaking is becoming much more difficult to actually get people to come to the theater like you are and keep it in the theater. And it was a strategy that Cinedigm, the distributor who, in partnership with Tribeca, who's also one of the distributors, decided let's try and get the movie out there to build up word of mouth before it even hits the theaters. And we're going to probably end up in about 20 cities by the time it's all done. So this gives access to everybody a chance to see the movie. So I was really excited by it because I knew that I have friends and people who are going to be in cities where this movie was going to play, and it would give them the chance. And you can go on, you can tell your friends to go watch it tonight on demand. And it's been, I think this is the beginning of the wave of a lot of movies with talent like this premiering on video on demand first before theaters.
Next question. Let's go right over here. Yes.
I'm just going to make a couple of comments. I'm Nancy. I wanted to say that when I go to a movie, I want to be entertained. The world is so stressful these days, and I don't want to go to a show and be stressed while I'm watching it. So this was really lighthearted. I love the quality of the actors level. I thought it was very creative with little comments throughout it. It felt interactive to me. So just thumbs up. I loved it.
Thank you very much.
Compliment right here. The grades that she gave, was that scripted? Was that something you
Yeah,
put
that
in?
was actually scripted. I mean, the wording changed as we kind of went through post-production, but that element, along with the voiceover, were both scripted. And to give you a short history of how films get made, or at least this film got made, Dan and Stacey Sheridan, who were the writers of this movie, wrote this movie 9 years ago and sold it to Universal. And Universal quickly decided they couldn't make the movie for the budget that they needed to in order to make back money. And it sat around for years, and the producers, the current producers, had read it way back when and had approached Universal and said, can we try and get this movie made? And it was very close with another cast and a different director 3 or 4 years ago, and then kind of died again, and then resurfaced once I got involved and Julianne got involved. But the process of getting a movie made is next to impossible. So I have a lot of respect for every movie that's out there, a much different response to movies than I did before I made this one.
Is there anything that you shot that you weren't able to get into the finished product that you, looking back, wish that you'd been able to get in?
There's nothing that I wish made it in, but there is one thing that we cut, and I wanted to cut it. We shot this movie in 23 days, which is not a lot of days in making a movie. So every moment counts. So the only scene that's missing is when Julianne's reading the play for the first time, we actually saw the play in her head, with Greg Kinnear playing the Edwardian father and the young Julianne, the one that we saw teaching in the beginning and in college, playing the Jane character. And it was this very stylized Edwardian piece. And I showed it to a few people that way, and it was in there for probably the first half of editing, and it just bothered me. I think it was very comical and very funny in a way that I thought hurt Linda's character, that it made it seem as if she didn't know how to judge talent. And even though it was very effective in selling the Greg Kinnear story, I felt like it took away from who Linda was, and the audience was going to be laughing at her as opposed to rooting for her, because you would think, oh, she keeps talking about how she knows great literature, and she just thought this was great. So, how much of the play you see is a very tricky part. We shot the whole, that play was a montage in the movie, but each of those scenes were actually filmed, and I spent a day just shooting the play, and it gets whittled down to about, I think, 96 seconds right now.
More questions? Go ahead. Let's go in the back. I see a hand up. Yes.
I read a review in the Los Angeles Times today, and I want to say
Oh boy.
the reviewer reviewing this is a very good.
Thank you.
So
The-
my word of mouth is going to help you a lot.
The comment was the LA Times reviewer was awful and had a horrible mistake.
It's very difficult. I mean, look, everybody has their own opinion, and we've generally, it's been about 80% very positive. But people have opinions, and people wish the movie was something that it's not, and I understand that, but that's not the movie that was written, and that's not the movie that we shot, and if it didn't appeal to you, that's fine. But you see a lot of reviews where people comment about, it should have been this, and it should have been that, and it's like, well, that's not the movie I wanted to make, so, go make a movie.
What's the biggest difference in directing television from a feature? And Is there anything that you took away from this experience that you'll be able to use in television in the future?
For sure. I mean, the actual shooting process, because we had such a short schedule, was very similar to shooting a television show because we're shooting a lot of pages each day. But the biggest difference was the amount of prep time. When you direct a half-hour episode of television, you get 4 days to prep, then an hour, maybe 7 days of prep, where I prepped this, well, a full pre-production period of about 6 weeks, but even before that, we started casting. Probably it was by 5 months. So every shot in this movie was talked about in depth with my director of photography, Vanya Sherjul, who did an amazing job. And you really can map out every single detail, even though things fall through the cracks. Not like in television, where you've had 2 days and you've looked at a location one time. And I mean, I literally sat in every one of these locations with the DP and said, okay, here's what we should do, and here's where we should light from, and here's what I want. And he was incredibly collaborative. I had worked with him on Nurse Jackie, so we had a relationship. But that's a major People Life Showtime. That's great. But it's you know, and then there's just a scope that you don't really get in television. You can kind of hang back and not be in a lot of coverage, and you know, it was really fun to shoot this movie on location. And Julianne lives in New York City, so that had a lot to do with us shooting just outside the city.
Let's go, we'll come back to you in a second. Let's go right over here.
How old were the actors, including Jason, that played the high school kids?
Michael Angarano, who plays Jason, is, at the time we shot this movie, which was fall of 2011, I think was probably 24, 25. Lily Collins, who played Hallie, I think it was 20, maybe, 21 maybe. Let's see, Charlie Saxton, who plays Will, I think is probably closer to 25. And then Nikki Blonsky, who you know, you might remember from Hairspray, is amazing. Again, being able to pull from this New York talent was great. And for her to come in and do this small role, she came in and auditioned for me. I was like, Nikki Blonsky's in here auditioning for a very small part, and she nailed it. But they were all, I think Sophie Curtis, who played the blonde student, was the only one that was under 18.
What's it like working with Nathan Lane? Because it seems to me like he's someone that you might have to control a little bit. He's just always so outlandish.
You would think so, but it's actually quite the opposite. I mean, he's so focused on the work. We did no rehearsal on this movie before we shot, so which is also quite unusual. It's something that Julianne felt strongly about, and I also felt strongly about, especially in comedy, and I was very used to that from television. And so we did a table read, which the actors just sit around a table and I read the stage direction and they just read their parts. And Nathan, before that, said, yeah, there are a couple things I want to work on. If you don't mind, I'll try them out at the table read, see what you think. And a lot of Nathan's dialogue came from that table read and some of his ideas. But he's very disciplined. I mean, he's obviously this amazing Broadway actor and incredible dramatic actor. He's got a great play if you're in New York. You should go see it. And he's really, as they all are, very disciplined. And when you have a short schedule like this, they know they're going to get 3, maybe 4 takes of something and have to move on. So it's by the script. There's, like I said, very little improv.
Yeah.
Well, one of my questions was about Nathan Lane. First of all, how did he get into the project? And secondly, the montage of putting it together and the Sondheim references, were those scripted or brought in afterwards?
They were. The question was how Nathan got involved and his singing of putting it together, the Sondheim piece. Nathan was also at the top of my list of people I wanted for that part. And when you've got a great script and Julianne Moore, and they had never worked together before, and he was somewhat reluctant at first. He loved the script, and he said, I just don't want to play that character I played in The Birdcage, and I don't want to do my Modern Family character, and I pitched him an idea about playing this kind of depressive character who gets life from reading the script. And he liked that approach to it and said yes. And then he's very good friends with Sondheim, as you might imagine, and had quite a nice time growing his beard out to look like Sondheim. There's a picture on the wall in his apartment that you don't see very well of Sondheim kind of dressed very similarly to him when he's reading the play at the very beginning. And he was up for singing and said this may be the last time he does any musical theater.
Very good.
More questions? Yes, right over here.
What do you personally think is the future for independent film? And secondly, will you do another one after doing this?
I'll answer the second one first. Yes, I'm reading some scripts right now in hopes of doing another one. And I think there is a future for independent filmmaking. It's going to live more in the video-on-demand world, I think. I mean, it's very difficult to fill theaters, and theaters need to make money. And you know, it's great that we have theaters like this that are willing to put on movies like this. But you also have to have a cast like Julianne Moore, Nathan Lane, and Greg Kinnear to bring people in. And when you don't have a name in your cast, it's impossible to raise the money. So you're looking at a very small budget, and it's almost as difficult to get distribution unless it's something, you know, Beasts of the Southern Wild. It's just so incredibly dramatic. But especially with comedies, it's very difficult to get them into theaters without some kind of name recognition.
Are you going to continue to work in television as well?
I am. While I'm reading these scripts, I'm going to be the producer-director on a new series on Fox coming this fall called Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is a comedy with Andy Samberg, written by the people who created Parks and Rec, which is a show I've directed quite a bit of. So I'll be doing that through the end of the year while I'm reading scripts.
You are a busy, busy man.
I'm trying to stay busy, trying to stay busy.
I think we got time for a couple more questions. Yes, I see a hand over here.
I don't have a question, I just want to say it's the best movie I've ever seen.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it was, thank you, that's very nice. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to make this movie, and I feel so strongly about it, is that reaction, obviously, but also I do feel there aren't movies made for a lot of people. And that I'm a huge fan of big summer blockbuster movies as much as anyone, but I think they're leaving out a large section of the viewing audience, and that's why it's hard to get people like you into theaters, because there aren't enough movies like this. And it just saying to me the first time I read it that this was a movie that had a good heart and had great laughs, and it was a very simple story, but it's how do you tell it in an interesting way.
Well, I think that's probably the best question, comment we're going to get of the night.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everybody for coming out. And most of all, I want to thank you, Craig Zisk, everybody.
Thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it. And please tell your friends.